1.
Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of Full Press Radio. This is May the 9th, 2022. With you today is myself, Carl, and Stevie Nick.
May the 9th be with you, Carl.
And also with you, Nick.
Am I going to make that joke every week this month? Yes, I am.
I only made it on the 5th, and that was enough for me.
Yeah, just once.
That's all I needed to be happy.
Good. Now I know it annoys you, so I'll keep doing it.
No, it doesn't. Please do. I mean, if I woke up to a text from you every single morning that said, may the something be with you, I would be happy.
Every single day? You know what was with us on Star Wars Day was the new Kenobi trailer.
Yes.
I regret to say it looks good. I'm going to watch it.
I mean, looks good or not, I don't believe any of the live action stuff. I didn't watch Bad Batch because I did not get super into Clone Wars.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've watched all of the Star Wars live action stuff, and I've watched every Marvel series that's come out, whether it's good like WandaVision or mediocre at best like Moon Knight. I've watched all of them.
Oh, that's the first mediocre review I've heard for Moon Knight. Actually, I haven't seen it, but
yeah, I was underwhelmed by it. Perhaps it was that it doesn't tie in to the rest of the MCU at all. It was just a very standalone thing. I don't know. I watched the finale and I was like, that was it, huh? We're done? Good. Now I don't have to watch anymore. So
And what about Book of Boba Fett? You watched that one?
I did.
I didn't see that one either.
That one got really good once it became essentially Mandalorian. That was my highlight of it.
So I might have to watch that one because I love the Mandalorian.
Yeah, it sets up the first half of it is like the Boba Fett, the origin of this, and then it essentially Mando shows up at some point and it becomes the Mando show.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a definite pro in that column. Good for them.
Yeah. So, but we are not here to talk about that because we have also, part of the reason that you have not had a chance to watch Moon Knight is because you have been so busy watching playoff hockey.
Man, I've been watching every night. The latest I stayed up, I think, was to the end of the second overtime of Pittsburgh, New York. And then, of course, I went to bed. And of course, they scored within like the first 10 minutes of the next period.
And that's how it always is. That's what gets me with these things. I'm like, okay, I'll stay up and watch it. But then it's a 20-minute intermission. I'm like, but what if they score like 30 seconds in? Honestly, I'm upset when they score that quick. And I'm like, you just made me wait 20 minutes to watch 30 seconds of hockey.
Yep. It wasn't quite 30 seconds in that game. But I think that's the only overtime game we've had so far.
Colorado Nashville also went to overtime.
Oh, yeah.
Game 2.
Against Connor Ingram.
The Connor Ingram show.
Yeah, no kidding. What do you make, 50 saves that night?
Yeah, it was a chunk. But you're right, not a ton of overtime this playoff.
But a ton of scoring.
Yeah, that's been very surprising. Maybe I know we had things to talk about, but let's just talk about some themes, right? Because that's the big one, scoring, and that every single game except for one series, I have no idea who's going to win at any point in time.
Yeah, it's wild. They're all split pretty evenly right now. I did not expect it, and honestly, like I started to get a little nervous after game one because almost everyone I picked to win the series lost their first game. And now they're all split 2-2.
Yeah. And very likely, I mean, after tonight, we could easily see 7 series at 2-2.
Yeah. I think Colorado is the only one that's going the way people expected it to, the way I expected it to.
Yeah. I mean, some of these series that we expected to go deep, right? Tampa, Toronto, pretty on par. But what's interesting is in almost every single one of these, like you said, there's been so few overtime games because so few of these games have been close, right? 2 overtime games so far, where tonight will be done, 32 games so far in this playoffs, and just a long list of borderline blowouts.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find that there's been a lot of coaches pulling their goalies very early, even if they're down by 2 or 3.
And Nashville on Saturday pulled Ingram with 4.5 minutes left in the game.
And that's how these scores get run up, though. So the final score to me isn't always a good indication of how lopsided the game is.
That's
because
true.
These goalies are being pulled earlier and earlier and earlier when the teams are down by 2 and 3.
Yep. Yeah.
But it's the playoffs, right? Like, you got nothing left to lose. The final score doesn't really matter if it's 2-1 or 4-1.
No, and teams and players are well aware of that. But it's been, because it's been so wide open, it's been a ton of fun watching these games.
Oh yeah. It's been really good. I think some series have been better than others. I haven't had a chance to watch all of them yet, but like in particular, the Toronto Tampa series and the Edmonton LA series, like the games, like you said, the scores have not been close, but the pendulum has just been swinging from one team to the other the entire series.
It's been whiplash for sure, trying to keep track of it and see what's been going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I particularly wasn't really expecting it in the Edmonton series. I definitely thought Tampa Toronto would be closer score wise and play wise, but the fact that the series is tied doesn't surprise me.
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. And honestly, the fact that you've got these, because both teams have had stretches of play in playoff history, but also just in the regular season where like they give up a bunch of goals and they score a bunch of goals. And in hindsight, isn't super surprising when you look at this and say, oh, Tampa scored 7 goals yesterday. Yeah, well, that's because Tampa can score 7 goals. Now, granted, empty nets, but still.
Yeah. But LA doesn't have that problem.
No.
Well, sorry, LA has that problem because that not being able to do it would be a problem. But they put up 6 last night.
They put up 4 last night.
4 last night? 4-0?
Yes. Yeah.
I thought it was 6-0.
I mean, a 4-0, 6-0. You still shut out a team that went full ham and scored 8 goals on you the game before.
So I thought Edmonton was in real trouble after that first game. Like that Mike Smith giveaway was very, very bad.
It was, that giveaway was enough to break a team right then and there. To do that to Mike Smith's way. First off, we got to stop with the Mike Smith apologists. I'm done with you all. It is foolish how terrible he is playing the puck and they never stop him. Just say no. Like, Mike, you are caught. The amount of people that say, oh, well, he wins us more games because of it than he loses. Does he? Because he's not, I would say through the rest of his playoffs, Mike Smith is not going to win you a game with his puck handling. But he sure as heck lost you one.
Yeah. Yeah, big time. What did you think about the decision to start him in game 2?
I wouldn't have. But here's the thing. You only get one shot to switch a goalie, right? Like if Koskinen has a bad game, you can't go back to Smith and be like, well, now we believe in you. So I understand why they didn't, but you got to assume behind the scenes, right? Some conversations about strategy were had for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, it's all in the past now, so we can look back and say they made the right decision by starting him. But I wouldn't have. At that time, I wouldn't have. I would have switched immediately. That being said, now that, there's been 3 games since then, the players really rallied for him because in games 2 and 3, it was the opposite. They blew out the Kings. Yeah.
And I wasn't able to watch last night's game, so I wasn't sure what exactly led to the 4-0 shutout that suddenly the Kings were able to stop the Oilers. But
here's one thing I was thinking, while we're talking about the Oilers and the Leafs, who has more pressure to win the first round, the Oilers or the Leafs?
The Leafs. And I'm not sure it's particularly close.
Who has more pressure to go deep, conference / Stanley Cup finals? The Leafs?
The Oilers.
Oilers have more pressure on themselves to go deep, but the Leafs have more pressure to win the first round.
Because that's the thing is the Leafs, this core with the Leafs has never even won a round. So the expectation for them is so low. But the Oilers have at least won a round, right? McDavid's won a round. So it's kind of comes down to, well, what can we do next? And both of these teams, I mean, the West until the West final is wide open. The East is wide open the entire way. I think at this point in time, there's very few teams that I would look at and say they're out of it. They're not making it. So,
yeah, it's true. It's true. Okay. What about New York, Pittsburgh? Because this is one that is less lopsided than I thought it would be.
Yeah, the fact is that Louis Domingue somehow has been managing to hold it together. And I don't think, I'm not expecting that to continue. He's played very well with Casey DeSmith out now for the entire season, right? Yeah. Like he's not coming back. Done. He's had his, what was it? Pec surgery?
Core muscle.
I knew it was something upper body. I knew it's a muscle group that I skip. That's what he did. And yeah, the fact that that Pittsburgh's up 2-1, they could take, and that game's tied 1-1 right now.
Yeah.
They've played really well. And I think some of the experience, I hate to have this conversation, but the experience of the Penguins is paying off. And the inexperience of the Rangers, I think, is showing.
Well, I think also what's showing on the Rangers is how much they've relied on their goaltender, right? Their goalie is really the one that's carried them this far. Don't get me wrong. I think they're a good team. But I think as soon as their opponent figures out their own goalie, they're not supporting him enough with goal scoring.
Yeah, I would. And the guys that need to, right? Like there's been very minimal production from like the Panarins and the Kreiders. And they've been there. They have been doing it, but not at the rate that they need to be.
Yeah. Agreed. So that one's interesting. Man, they're all interesting. Like Calgary, Dallas. That series is tied at, Calgary's up. It's tied at 2 now, right?
It is tied at 2-2, heading back to Calgary. And what clearly the lack of scoring from both sides, and it is 2-1 Stars. Game 4 is tonight.
2-1 Stars. That's right. Yeah.
So, but especially through those first 2 games, the amount of scoring that wasn't seen was really surprising. Mm-hmm. Game 3, Dallas definitely, showed up, got some scoring happening, and then was able to hold on for that win. That's really, it's clearly the closest series, but what I find surprising is both the amount of shots that Calgary's taking, but how low the quality of those shots is that Calgary's taking. And they need to fix that. They can't just be coming in and like just getting all pucks on net. Jake Ottinger is not going to be giving them that, and they need to switch something up. They can't just come in, take a basic shot. They need to kind of own the zone a little bit more than they've been doing.
Yeah, and probably take advantage of their power plays too. They're not scoring a lot with the man advantage. I don't know why this surprised me, but this series is very rough. There's a lot of shenanigans going on in this one. Shouldn't be surprising.
Anytime you got Jamie Benn and Matthew Tkachuk in the same series, something's going to happen.
Yeah. It's been a rough one. What about Washington, Florida?
Yeah, that's the one I would say. No, for sure. That is a series I've watched the least of so far. And if you were to tell me that the President's Trophy winning Florida Panthers would be putting up a performance like we're seeing from them, I wouldn't believe you. I would, in no chance would I believe that was happening.
That game currently tied 1-1. I haven't watched that series either, so I'm not really clear on who is doing what, for the Capitals.
Well, and what's interesting is the Capitals are the only team. One thing we haven't really touched on, we maybe should as we're going through, is just the way that goalies have been changing. But Washington is one of the few that made the choice to switch goalies, switching to Ilya Samsonov for Game 3, and went great for them. So I think that's a big help with what they've been getting from them. I mean, again, 1 game sample size. It's so hard and weird talking about all of this and be like talking big, dramatic, sweeping things when it's been 2, 3, sometimes 4 games.
Yeah. And we're going to be sitting here this time next week, and the opposite is going to be true now. And Florida's going to be through, and Calgary is going to be through. And
right. Everyone we thought, well, just the higher seed wins every single round. And we're like, oh, we're the dumbest.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I like I said, I haven't really watched this series, so it's hard for me to comment on what exactly is going on. Just following through the app and seeing the goals scored, I'm consistently surprised at what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I think with what I've seen in that series, Washington's done a really great job of just getting production in front of the net and doing a really, strong job of keeping Florida more to the outside. And so with that, because like Florida's still the better team. Like let's not fool ourselves that even though this series is as tight as it is, that they're suddenly going to lose to the Capitals and it's going to be a blowout. They might, right? Washington could win tonight. That series could be done in 5. But Florida's been better. They just aren't finishing.
Yeah, and I think they're a resilient bunch too. And they've got the confidence right now. I wouldn't write them off quite yet.
They are the only team in the playoffs yet to score a power play goal.
That is pretty crazy. And special teams are so important in the playoffs, especially in this year's playoffs, because like you're talking about themes earlier and goal scoring being one of them. How about penalties? Like these refs, it's been the referee show in all the games I've watched. They're loving blowing the whistles.
Yeah, and it seems like something I think we've all been wanting for some time, that playoff games are being called similar to regular season games.
It does feel that way.
Right? What was a penalty is still a penalty. And there's that consistency. So you know what you're going to get going into a game. Whereas it's like, well, I don't know what a hook is. I don't know what I can get away with. Things are being called pretty evenly, and I like it.
Yeah, I don't mind it either. I mean, it's for sure contributed to the increased goal scoring.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? Definitely. So I'm not opposed to it. I like seeing goals being scored. And plus, I like the drama that comes with the penalties, especially in the playoffs. Coaches get very, very upset. Players get very, very upset. So it heightens everything.
Well, and the look of shame when like, yeah, it shouldn't have done that, right? That's also heightened a lot more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's great. Okay, so I've got 3 series left on my list here that we've yet to talk about. Well, we kind of talked about Colorado, Nashville. Any other comments on that one?
Let's go for the sweep tonight. I don't know. It's been fun to watch. That the Avalanche have been exactly who the Avalanche are. It's great having Gabe Landeskog back now that he's back from injury. I don't know. Let's just keep Nazem Kadri from getting suspended, and I don't know, try and go win a Stanley Cup.
Kadri's going to wait until a much higher drama / tension series to get suspended. This is just like warm up.
Thing is, when he gets suspended, it's going to be like, because of his repeat offender status, he's going to miss an entire round. So
yeah, easily. Yeah. Yeah, I could see a sweep tonight. We'll know very soon. Makar, man, that guy, highlight reel all the time. He always ends up in my feed somehow. It's very exciting.
Well, that game winner in overtime, I don't the things that he does, right? And the way that he can move on the ice is just the most surprising and unexpected. And especially when you've got a forward up defending him, who then like you need to get this forward like backpedaling in the zone when he's coming at you like that. It's not fair.
I do wonder how many times they're going to let him score the exact same way before they figure it out and put an end to it. Like he's fast and like even just watching it on the screen, the way his shoulders move and where his head's looking, you're like, well, I did not expect him to do that. But he scored that goal like 3 times.
What, you mean the exact goal where he like fakes like he's going to pass, then Deeks goes down the boards and then puts it high shoulder?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great goal because it works.
You just think they're going to figure it out. Like at some point, the goalie's got to be like, okay, he's coming down the boards. I should push my shoulder against the post.
Yeah, but then he's leaving it open down low, and then Makar can just pass it across to McKinnon or whoever's open.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the problem with the Avalanche.
And that's why it works, because you can't cheat on one side. It's the same reason why, like, yeah, why doesn't every goalie, just like when the Capitals are on the power play, just like face Ovechkin's dot? Why don't teams just do that? Because there's other good players on the ice.
Yeah, that's a good thing I'm not a goalie, because that's what I would do. It's so simple. Just close the gap with the post.
Here's what you're going to do. You're going to stand up really tall and just spread out. Spread eagle in front of the net. The more space you take up, the better it is.
All right. Do you want to finish in the East or the West?
Let's finish with let's go to Carolina, Boston, because that's been a very interesting series. As much as some of those games haven't been close, with the injury to Antti Ranta, and some of these other, right? We've had I think on Saturday alone, there was at least 2 goals not called back on goalie interference reviews, which then brings us to a third theme, which is contact with goalies. Where do you stand on what we're seeing this playoffs with goalie contact?
I don't know, man. I can't read goaltender interference. I'm wrong every time. I still think it's 50-50. I mean, like, where do I stand? Like, don't cheat. Don't bump into the goalie in his crease. That's my official stance on it.
That seems like a stance that makes sense. But what complicates all of it is, we've seen it in many games so far, and we see it all the time. But it becomes more of an issue in a series like this when tensions become escalated and you start having, scrums, things like that. But the player who gets put into a goalie by that goalie's defenseman. And we see it all the time. And even, someone who maybe has a little bit of help bumping into a goalie because that defender's there. I can't get away, but I'm also not trying to get out of the way when this guy's pushing me towards the goalie. I just think what I've seen, and with it a little more cut and dry, that like if that goalie is out of the crease, that's not his ice anymore. And we've seen a little bit of that, and it's been fairly clear, I think.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know if we need to do it where like both feet have to be in the crease, 1 foot in the crease. And I'm fine if you want to come out to cut that down. But if you're also going to be standing outside of the ice that's designed for you to be in, you don't just get to go skating around wherever you want. And then if someone bumps into you, you're going to be upset about it.
But this is the problem with the gray area of that rule, right? Like, it's taken advantage of by all parties, by the goalies, by the players defending and offensive players.
Mm-hmm. The offending players and defending players.
Offending players.
Yes.
Offending just sounds like they're doing something wrong already, which is the exact assumption we're trying to get away from.
But that is the assumption, right? A goalie goes down, and luckily we haven't seen too many instances of just like flopping. There was it, Marc-Andre Fleury? I saw it flop real well though. I don't know. I just feel I agree. I think maybe the solution then is just stricter policing of it, I guess. I don't know.
I think so. Clearer language maybe about what the rule is. But speaking of flopping, how about the opposite of flopping? Hey, how about that Carolina goalie? I can't remember his name right now, that third string goalie.
Yes.
Do you remember his name?
It is also, I know his first name's Piotr. That's the only thing that I remember right now.
So his first game, because Antti Raanta got hurt, and he stood up to Brad Marchand. Like, talk about goalie. I actually thought that there was something bigger going to happen there when I saw that clip. Because Marchand not only like bumped into him, he also took a whack at him.
Yes. And then got a whack back.
I love that. I love that goalie stood up to him. He's just like, you can't hit me. I'll hit you back.
The whack back is the way to go when it comes to dealing with Brad Marchand.
The whack back. Yes, absolutely.
And just like right in his face too, which is so good. Yeah. No one ever does that. No one ever stands up to Brad Marchand. They're just like, oh.
And like, in addition to that, you're a third string goalie going up against Brad Marchand, like one of the top players in the league.
Yeah.
To be on the ice and listen to what they were saying to each other.
Yeah. So yeah, that was really good. But a tied series, neither team has lost at home yet. So home team winning every game in that series. Do you think that continues and we just get 7-game series?
I don't really. But what strikes me about these Bruins is that when their big guns are going, they're competing. Like last night, it was the Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak show.
Well, and because they put that line back together again too.
Yeah, for them. I hope they keep it that way. But if they're going to do that, then the Hurricanes have to answer to that. And I have no doubt that Rod Brind'Amour and that team can figure it out. I think the Hurricanes are probably going to take the next two.
Yeah, I would have thought that they would have going into game 3. And I know that in game 3, Antti Raanta was still out. But it seemed like that was, to me, I was really surprised with how well Boston came out. I thought they were done. I thought that Carolina had it in the bag and that they were just going to go out and honestly sweep them. Like it felt very lopsided at that point, but
yeah,
getting that line back together, and whether it stays back together or not, and how much they play them together is yet to be seen. But for me, it's much closer than I thought it would be.
Well, I think that is the edge that comes with, again, I hate to bring it up, but experience, right? Like these guys who have gone deep in the playoffs, they've won Stanley Cups, they've gone to the finals and lost. They know that a 2-game deficit isn't the end of the series. It can feel a lot more dire, I think, when you're new to this, and this is the first time that you're going through it. The hole feels a lot bigger.
Well, and I like the saying that you're never out of a playoff series until you lose at home. And so for Boston, right, you lose 2 in Carolina. All we got to do is go home and win 2. If we win both of those, we've got our home ice. We got last change, all those things. We can go out and we can make that work.
Yeah, that's it. Last series we've got here.
Actually, one last thought I did have before we move on from that one.
Yeah.
Because with the changing in lines, right, with having that, if they're going to play that big line together, maybe one of the reasons we might not see that as much in Carolina is because Carolina can get that matchup and can just shut them down, which we've definitely seen. That's the strategy, right? Like that's why they went on and had to get a Taylor Hall to have a second line. So maybe we see a little bit less of that in Carolina. Anyways, last series.
That's a good point.
Blues,
St. Louis,
Wild.
Minnesota. 2-2.
2-2. Jordan Binnington getting the net.
I mean, after a 6-2 loss and a 5-1 loss, it's not that surprising, I have to say.
No.
Especially with how close these teams should be. But you could say the same for the games that Minnesota lost too. Like they were shut out in game one.
Yeah, this is one. I mean, like many series, it's a very close, tied at 2, and yet 0 of the games have felt particularly close.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And this was a series that the last 2
yeah,
weeks.
It is. This is incredibly wild. At least 50% wild.
At least 50%. But this is a series the last 2 weeks where like this is going to be the closest series. How do we predict this? I predict lots of overtimes. And here we're talking about like 4 goal victories in 3 out of the 4 games.
Yeah.
It's just wild. Okay, I'm done. Let's go to break.
We're going to get Nick a thesaurus. We'll be back on the other side with looking at some more of the playoffs and some news of the week. Three, 2, 1.
Okay, I think we did a good recap of the playoffs there before the break. I think what we haven't done yet is make wildly irresponsible predictions for how they're going to end.
I mean, you want my irresponsible predictions or my failed attempts at being correct predictions?
Okay. Give me your smart one and your irresponsible one, and then we'll see which ones come true.
Okay.
I'm going to write them down.
Okay. Let's start with the easy one.
Okay.
Colorado, Nashville. I believe I started by saying Colorado in 5. Yeah. My smart pick is Colorado in 4. My wildly irresponsible pick is Colorado in 6. I do not see a way that they lose that series.
Yeah. I would actually agree with that. I'd even think 7 is just like, that's not even irresponsible. It's just not likely. It's not realistic.
No.
Okay.
That said, hoping Darcy Kemper can get back, at least in the next round. Still out after getting the weirdest injury, getting a stick between the cage.
Oh, yeah.
And then hitting him in the eye.
I forgot about that. That was crazy.
Hey, you found a thesaurus during the break.
Ooh, that was a close one. Nobody's fault, like kind of a freak accident. But like so scary because that could end very, very poorly.
Yeah, definitely no one's fault. It wasn't predatory. Let's say that.
Yes. All right. So you should work at the NHL Player Department of Safety.
That's true. But I would only make for Minnesota games, I would make wild puns. For Nashville games, I'd make predatory puns. For Boston games, I'd say that something was brewing in the game. It would be all puns all the time.
Honestly, it might be the one thing we're missing from those videos.
That's true. All right. Minnesota, St. Louis tied up at 2. I think my irresponsible pick would be, I don't even know what an irresponsible pick would be for this one.
Mine would be St. Louis in 6.
That would be mine, I think, which probably means Minnesota in 7 is my responsible pick.
Yeah, mine too. All right, who's next?
Dallas and Calgary. Dallas is up 2-1. Irresponsible. Dallas in 5. Feels irresponsible.
Yeah, it does feel irresponsible. But the responsible one, I think, is harder for this one.
It is, yeah.
Like, I almost feel my responsible pick, which is funny because last week I said Calgary in 4, is Calgary in 7.
Yeah, I don't think Calgary can win. Here's the thing. These games have all been so close. Like they've all essentially been 1-goal games, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's easy for a team to go on a run. Dallas has won 2 in a row. I think Calgary could win it in 6. So I'm going to say that just to be different from you. I'm going to say Calgary in 6.
Okay. Who you got next?
Oilers, Kings tied at 2. This feels like the exact same choice as what I would do for the other series of Kings in 6 is irresponsible.
Yeah. But fun, right?
But fun. It feels like a 7-game series. And I'm going to say Oilers.
In 7?
Yeah.
My smart pick is Oilers in 6.
Okay. So you think they'll win the next 2?
I think being shut out 4-0 is a big no-no for them. And I think that they're going to respond the way that they did after game 1.
All right. Florida and Washington. Washington is up 2-1. The game we're watching right now is tied at 1. Irresponsible. Washington in 5.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Responsible?
Washington in 6.
Wow. You've switched, hey?
Yeah. This is not the only series that I've flipped on, but Washington's done the things that it needs to do. I mean, until Florida can score a power play goal, and I do not believe their goal tonight was on the power play.
It wasn't.
So until they can figure out how to score on the power play, I don't think you can win a series. I haven't seen the numbers if a playoff series has ever been won with 0 power play goals, but I don't think so.
I think my irresponsible pick is Florida in 6, because I think it would be irresponsible to expect them to win 3 in a row at this point.
Okay.
But I still think Florida is going to win the series in 7.
Okay. 7.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. Now we've been recording, so I haven't been deeply watching the show, but I do see the shot count as 20-9 for Florida. So I maybe shouldn't be picking Washington, but hey, here we are.
Shots don't mean much if they don't go in the net.
Thanks, Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Toronto and Tampa, another series tied up at 2. This one, I don't even know what an irresponsible pick would be. Do you have a feel for something irresponsible?
Anything in less than 7.
Here's my irresponsible pick. All 3 of these next games, it will go 7 and all 3 will end in overtime.
That is a very irresponsible pick.
But I think it's Tampa in 7.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. So nothing's changed since last week.
Carolina and Boston tied at 2. I'm picking Carolina in 6. Which probably means Boston in 6 is irresponsible.
Yeah. I think any Boston winning scenario is irresponsible. 6 or 7. I think Carolina is going to win this one.
All right. Which brings us to a game that is 2-1 Penguins. However, the actual game is 4-2. And I know we didn't talk too much about it, but that game that they played on Saturday where Pittsburgh was up 4-1, blew the lead and still came back and won.
Wild.
Just a bananas game. Nice.
I'm writing that one down.
Yeah. Add that in the margins in that book you got there. So it feels like, even if Pittsburgh somehow manages to blow this lead, which was 4-1, is now 4-2, it feels like this game is theirs to win. And so I guess an irresponsible pick would probably be Rangers in 6.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm gonna go Penguins in 6, though. Another series that I flipped on.
Pittsburgh in 6 is your smart pick?
Yes.
Well, according to you. And Rangers in 6 is irresponsible. I definitely think Rangers in 6 is irresponsible. Before tonight, I would have said this series is going 7. It could, to me, it all depends on what happens in this game tonight. But I think the thing we hate talking about and bringing up, that experience, is going to give the Penguins the edge in the series. So I'm also going to flip my pick and say Pittsburgh.
Which is a problem because you may recall back to last week that I accidentally set the Rangers as my Stanley Cup final pick in our bracket.
That's right. It's a big problem for you.
And so now instead of Tampa, I mean, Tampa's not a lock to make it out of the first round anyways. And everyone's bracket, there's going to be a bunch of busted brackets in this East. And all over the place. I mean, there's 4 series tied 2-2 right now. So
yeah, I think there's going to be a bunch of busted brackets in general. Like last week, we made mention that neither of us picked an upset. No one picked an underdog. There's always a couple underdogs that come out.
Yeah, and right now it's looking like Pittsburgh and Washington will be those ones. So
yeah,
all right.
We'll see.
We've got news this week, though. The biggest news of the week: the New York Islanders firing Barry Trotz as their head coach.
Such a weird, surprising decision. I'm not sure I understand why. Well, okay. I understand why. They missed the playoffs. They had an awful year. But I think that there's enough what ifs in this year for the Islanders specifically. Like, it's almost like, remember last year we were like, you can't make any big team decisions because the year was so messed up because of the COVID and the lockdowns and all that stuff.
Right. The way we felt about this is how we should feel about the Islanders is how we felt last year about the Dallas Stars.
Yeah. And about most of the league, frankly, like everyone was in the same situation last year. This year, the Islanders, like they got hit by COVID. They started that weird road
13-game road trip to start the season.
Yeah, like there was just so much going on that was outside of just this is the team that we have to ice that it's almost unfair to judge the coach and the players on their record.
I'm with you on that. I mean, this was the team that got the rawest of deals with COVID, with road trips, with then another road trip that got canceled because of COVID entirely outside of their doing, right? Their Western road trip got canceled because Canadian teams couldn't have fans, like just all the things that led to this season. And yet they still had an incredible end to it, which I think to me makes this even more surprising that they would go out and do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't get it. And I think Barry Trotz is a big reason why this team was successful, after they lost a bunch of talent, in John Tavares and, maybe not some other players of that caliber, but they lost a few guys. And they went and picked up not anyone of talent that could backfill for John Tavares. And yet he still managed to get this team to play at a high caliber and make the playoffs and go on a run.
Well, they have, they played an incredibly strong defensive style of hockey and continued to lose defenders, right? Devon Taves is a fantastic member of the Avalanche, no longer an Islander, right? Yeah. Nick Leddy, not on this team anymore. So it's tough looking at that. But tell me, so they need to go to sign a coach, and I need you to tell me that my idea is stupid.
Okay. I'm always good for that.
Right. I knew it. Here's my thought. Jeff Blashill to the Islanders, Barry Trotz to Detroit.
It's an interesting idea. I'll say this. It's an interesting idea for the Islanders. It's an interesting idea for Detroit too. I think Barry Trotz is the guy who it's not an interesting idea for. I think Jeff Blashill, I think he did a really good job in Detroit with the roster that he was given. Like, you talk about raw deals. He got a bit of a raw deal in Detroit through his tenure there. I'd be interested to see what he could do with a half decent NHL roster.
Well, and he is the reason that I think that he would end up there is because Lou Lamoriello is not one to really in his tenure, right? He brought Mike Babcock into Toronto, which maybe he brings Babcock in here. then, bringing in Trotz here, he's one to bring in the big veteran coach. And Blashill was coaching a long time in Detroit.
Yeah.
I think longer than a lot of people remembered. So that's kind of what I thought there. But then on the flip side, you said that it would be bad for Trotz. Why do you think that he wouldn't be in favor of going to Detroit?
Because I think where Barry Trotz has found success has been not on a developing team, like has been with a team that has had the talent, that has had all the tools in the toolbox to win and be successful, and they just haven't been. And he's come in and shaped them into something that can be a winner. He did it in Washington. Obviously, he won the Stanley Cup. He turned the New York Islanders into a contender. Detroit's not there yet at a talent level. I'm not saying he can't do it. He's a great coach. I'd love to see what he could do. I just, it doesn't feel like the best fit for me right now.
Yeah, I could see that. So you don't think that, I know last week, you'd made your thoughts that it would be a former Red Wing coming in. There has to at least be a conversation between Yzerman and Trotz though, right?
I would think so. Yeah, 100%. You have to do your due diligence.
Yeah, sounds
like
about right.
Like, here's our roster. What could you do with it, with where they're at?
Right. How would you use it? What do you think? What are some things that you've liked, etc.?
Yeah, exactly.
The New York Islanders are not the only team making notable staffing changes today. The Ottawa Senators fired Pierre McGuire from his role as Vice President of Player Development.
So, first of all, it's hard not to smile when you're talking about Pierre McGuire. But the first thought that came to my mind here is, what did he do? Because like player development is not a like short term, let's see what you can give us in 10 months kind of job, right? That's like, you're in it for the long haul.
Yes.
So after 10 months, I'm just thinking from a performance perspective, what more were they hoping for from him out of 10 months of being on the job?
Well, 10 months out of a 3-year deal. He still had 2 more years left on his contract with the team.
Yeah. So he did something.
Maybe he did something. To me, this smells more like a Eugene Melnyk hiring, that now that they don't have to worry about that, they can easily part ways with Pierre.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought too. That he was just brought in by the owner, not well liked by anyone else. Now that the owner's not there, you get him out of there.
And maybe he's just been quite useless in his role, which difficult to say. But again, it either is something big or pretty or just gross negligence.
It's either nothing at all or everything.
Right. So interesting. The only downside is that this might mean that Pierre McGuire ends up on our televisions again.
I was just going to ask you which broadcast you think is going to pick him up.
I hope no one, but I assume that it's like TNT.
Yeah, probably.
No, I don't like that. Mind you, I watch them very little, but
nobody wants that. Nobody.
What they should do, this would be good, is that just no one hires him fully. TSN brings him back, but only to cover Ottawa Senators games. And so because that's his new wheelhouse, right? And so as they're bringing guys up, he has that very specific, very detailed amount of knowledge that he loves to bring, but also now with a tinge of petty jealousy.
Oh, you're so right. He's definitely going to end up, I don't know, in Canada or along somewhere in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. Most likely.
Hopefully it's just on a local broadcast that we never have to watch.
Someone will hire him. He will not go unhired, whether it be hopefully not for a national role, but very likely some Some team somewhere will bring him in.
Remember how he wanted to be a GM and his name kept being floated around every time a team was looking for a GM?
This seems like it's the nail in the coffin for that whole shtick.
Right? Like, no one's going to hire him after he spent 10 months as the VP of player development.
No.
And couldn't hold his job.
No, absolutely not. All right. One last piece of news. The NHL awards are coming up, and those nominations are starting to trickle in. The Norris Trophy started today, and they must have done that one first because it was the least noteworthy of them all. The nominees for that are Roman Josi, Victor Hedman, and Cale Makar.
Yeah, and we said this before we started recording, not much of a surprise there.
No, I know who I would pick. Because in all three of these players are in the NHL playoffs right now. Only one of them was good enough to get talked about on this show tonight. And so I feel like that's my bar. So I have to go Cale Makar.
Why did we talk about him on the show, though? Because of a goal he scored in the playoffs.
I mean, and how he's done that repeatedly throughout his career.
3 times. Roman Josi's going to win this year. Again.
And I won't be upset about it. He's had an amazing year.
He's had an amazing year. And like, that's not to say that Cale Makar hasn't. He absolutely has. He's not far behind Josi. But I think with where these guys are at in their careers with the teams that they're on, I think Josi's a clear winner here.
Rick Tocchet just stormed off the set. One second. We need to back this up. This might be the best halftime show ever. Okay.
What?
I looked over and they went to it and we had guys just on their phones and Rick Tocchet is upset and just storms off.
You're on the Panthers game?
Yes.
What is happening?
It's fake. Ugh.
Oh, it's fake?
I mean, they do some pretty good acting, but never mind. I got all excited for nothing.
I think the bigger drama is what's happening in this New York-Pittsburgh game. Like, Igor Shesterkin not having a very good game at all.
No, but I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that we come back and there's actual drama happening in that intermission room.
Let's see. Search Tocchet.
Nonetheless, do you, with everything else that's going on, there was something else I wanted to talk about tonight. Oh, draft lotteries tomorrow. That was it.
Who do you think's going to win?
I mean, probably the Habs, statistically speaking.
No, come on. Who do you think's going to win?
Okay, my smart brain says the Habs.
There's a whole industry being built on this right now. Just tell me who you think's going to win.
My smart brain says Habs.
And give me $100 for your thoughts.
My pick of like which team would the NHL most like to win and kind of make that happen. And do you want Shane Wright to go play in front of 12 people in Arizona? Probably not. My brain immediately went Flyers. That's who I think wins it.
Oh, interesting. That's your gut feel, hey? You know what's funny? Before we started recording, I did a tankathon. You know who the number 1 pick went to? The Philadelphia Flyers.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel so teams that the NHL very much doesn't want to win it. It's just the Chicago Blackhawks. Everyone else, the NHL, and probably the Sabres. They're like, they've had enough. But anyone else in this thing could easily win it without some rigged balls. So
I don't even think Chicago has a pick this year, do they?
Did they have to forfeit it?
I don't think they. Tankathon says it's going to Columbus.
Oh, for Seth Jones.
Yeah. So they don't even have a pick.
They're so bad.
They are bad. Chicago and Vegas don't have a pick either. Like, you want to talk about Barry Trotz and where he should go. Vegas is a good option for him.
That is a very good option. A winnable team. But like Vegas is now somehow turned into this team where they just continually cycle people over and over and over.
I don't know.
Again.
They've somehow become the villain of the NHL in the last year. It's kind of interesting.
It is interesting.
I think if there's a team that the NHL wants to win, it's the Seattle Kraken.
I would agree with that one for sure. I ran it once. I need you to know the Ottawa Senators are picking first, and the second pick belongs to the Detroit Red Wings.
I like that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if Ottawa won, if it was rigged and they gave it to Ottawa.
No, those are some big jumps from two teams, though. So, anyways, that's going to be tomorrow. But we'll be back next week. We'll be tuning in on Twitter, playing our game of high sticking, where you pick for this round only. And it looks like most likely, most of these are going to go 7. So we probably will just be wrapping up the first round by this time next week. You head over and pick who you think wins each game. I think we sorted out that it's not scores for this round, just wins, because there would be way too much work for me having to try to sort that out. So we've got that happening at our Twitter at Fourth Line Podcast with the number 4. Tell us for every game who you think is going to do it. If you pick correctly the most through the NHL playoffs, we will send you a jersey, which seems great. I like the sound of that.
That is great.
It is fantastic. You're right. So we've got that happening, and just hanging out, talking hockey whenever we're sitting around watching games. We'll be, like all of us, we're on our phones. So we'll be chatting with whomever is around watching games. And thank you for those that are tuning in. It's been a lot of fun already this playoffs. Look forward to more of it. And we will see you next week.
It's time for us to wrap up another Fourth Line show. I know what you're thinking. You don't want us to go. The Colorado Avalanche are leading the pack. And if Brad Marchand hits you, you can give him a whack-back.